So, hi and welcome to the Perimenopause and Menopause Club. I'm Tracy Sider and I'm here live today with Vikki Ede, who is a natural menopause coach. And Vikki is going to be talking to us today about her 3 top tips to a happier menopause. And who doesn't want that? So, hi, Vikki, and welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this whole journey of teaching women about hormones?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Vikki here from the UK, and it's really nice to be here with you all. Thanks for inviting me, Tracy. And yeah, how did I end up where I am today? Well, it's kind of like most of us, higgledy-piggledy journey. I started out as a health coach, well, actually, as an instructor, an aerobics instructor back in the day, in the early 90s.
Right. Was it pre or post leg warmers?
It was leg warmers and the old thong backs as well.
Right.
What did we do to ourselves? Those fabulous times. But I started out like that, and I went on and did a variety of things, personal training and becoming a nutritional therapist, etc. And I personally had always, since my early 20s, experienced hormonal issues. I had endometriosis from my early 20s, but I didn't really know anything much about hormones. Fast forward to my mid-40s, when we'd moved back and forth to Australia twice, quite stressful with a family, and we didn't just do it once. We went there, we came back, we went there, we came back. So that was a lot of toing and froing. So that left me at 47 back in the UK, no sunshine anymore, and starting to feel really, really unwell, not myself, unhappy, and all this, all these strange symptoms. I wasn't sleeping. I could get to sleep, but then I'd wake up like bing, wide awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I couldn't get back to sleep. And then it sounds crazy, but then I would be wide awake and I would be thinking about all these crazy things. I'd be having anxiety attacks, palpitations, and I would be going over conversations that I'd had with people maybe 25 years earlier, thinking about the things that I should have said to them. So clearly there was a lot going on in my brain. And but the worrisome thing was the lack of sleep. So then that left me really tired in the morning. And then you drag yourself out of bed feeling absolutely terrible. That then leads to you eating, even as a nutritional therapist, eating some of the wrong foods because you just feel so bad, maybe drinking too much coffee. And then after lunch, fortunately, I'll add here that I work from home. After lunch, I would need a nap. I've never napped in my life, not even after having babies, etc. I just never needed it. And I would fall asleep on the sofa. I would also get anxiety attacks. And I just felt I was not myself. So I started investigating. I tried changing my foods because I'm a nutritional therapist. I know how to create energy, etc. None of it worked. So I then continued investigating because I knew something was wrong. And one day, a friend of mine, who is also a health coach, said to me, "Do you think it's the menopause?" And I was absolutely horrified. How rude. How very, very rude of her to suggest such a thing. I was only 47. Right. And this goes to show how back then, which is now 8 years ago, I knew nothing about the menopause, because why would I? I wasn't an old lady. My perception back then was that you become an old lady and one day your period stopped. That was as much thought as I had given menopause. So after I went home, very disgruntled that she should be so rude to me, I then started investigating. And I thought, maybe she's right. So I then did a lot more investigation. I got lots of books, and I realized that she really was right. And therefore I needed to make some significant changes to what I was doing. And although I was eating well, I was not eating what I needed to be eating for menopause. Or perimenopause, this whole new world that I'd never even encountered, which can be like the 10 years leading up to actual menopause. So I then found that it explained why, I started to understand why I'd had endometriosis and why I'd had all these other problems. Anyway, I did some training and became a natural menopause coach, because I realized in my investigation that at that point, back in 2013, there were very few people around and there was very little information on the internet. And what was there was extremely confusing. So I did my course, I became qualified, I fixed myself and I felt better again, and I was back to the old me. And then I realized that maybe other women were feeling exactly the same and having exactly the same struggles. And so maybe I could help them. And so 8 years later, here we are. That's what I've been doing now I've been teaching other women now for 7 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about menopause. Like, what are these words? Menopause, perimenopause, and what age? Like, as you said, you were like, I'm 47, I'm too young, right? There's a lot of confusion around that. So maybe if you can explain just a little bit to our clubbers, what are the different ages and categories and definitions of things?
So there's 3 stages. So the first, as I say, is the new word that I learned back then, which is perimenopause. And actually, interestingly enough, that word is a fairly recent word, because prior to maybe, I think it was in about the 50s that they actually came up with that phrase to explain this phase, this time, this experience that women have before menopause. Because menopause is much like that first day when your periods start. You are now in reproductive mode. It's the day that your periods stop. So it's literally one day, but of course you don't know that that's your last period necessarily. So it's becomes you are considered you do 1 day in menopause, and then you become post-menopause. After you've gone 12 months without a period, you are then considered post-menopause. Now, with the age thing, so the average age of menopause is 51, but we're all individuals and we all have our own unique experience, so it can very much vary. So some women can go into menopause in their early 40s. That is considered very young. For the majority of women, it's going to be late 40s, early 50s. Now, that said, I am coming up for 56 and I still have my periods. So I've had, once I got things sorted out, my periods went back to being regular, and I have now missed a couple of periods, like one in November and January. So I guess I'm getting there, but I'm not there yet. So you've got perimenopause, which is the lead up, menopause, which is that 1 day, which is your last period, and then 12 months later, you are then known as postmenopause, and you are postmenopausal for the rest of your life, which these days could be easily 30, 40 years, given the average age that we live to.
And I think there's also a misconception. I mean, embarrassingly, till a couple of years ago, I thought you like chug along, one day your periods stop, and then you're just like old and dry, right? I had no idea that there was this continuum. And I think another misconception that's out there is that once you hit menopause, all the symptoms are going to go away. You're no longer going to have the hot flashes. So maybe if you can speak to us a little bit about what are some of the first symptoms and what are some symptoms that carry on, right? I know people like way into their 70s, 80s who are still having hot flashes. Why that happens.
Okay, so some of the first symptoms that women may pay attention to is that lack of sleep. Or not being able to sleep through the night, because obviously that really affects us. So that might be one of the first noticeable symptoms, but they won't necessarily associate that with their oncoming menopause. much like me. Another symptom that can happen for women is anxiety. They can maybe start to feel a bit more anxious, or tasks that they used to find quite easy have now become a bit more difficult or a bit more confusing, or they'll get more anxious about doing things. Me, with driving, I found it quite hard. I used to drive for my job. I used to drive all over the place, and I found that I didn't like having to go to new places, because I'd get a bit anxious about, oh, okay, well, what if I get lost, or what? And it was silly, and I'm it was just for a while, but it was difficult, and it made, I think, no, I'm not going to drive there. I won't do that because I might get lost. So it stopped me doing things. But other things that women might experience in those early days is kind of digestive issues starting up. So they might be getting constipation, or they might be diagnosed with IBS, or they might start getting reflux, bloating, things like that. And another symptom that they might start noticing then is that they might start gaining weight and not really understanding why, because they're not doing anything different. So that can be kind of, and there's many more symptoms, but those are some of the symptoms that will lead us into it. And then, exactly as you said, there's so many women think, oh, well, once my periods have stopped, life's going to be hunky-dory and I'll just go back to normal. And then they're really shocked when that doesn't necessarily happen. And exactly as you said, that I've had clients whose hot flushes, etc., have been, and that could be another early sign, but their hot flushes have been going on for 20 years. That's just ridiculous. That's just not how it should be. Women in their 60s and 70s still getting hot flushes. And the sleep issues can still continue. So the problem is arising from, we think of menopause as all that happens is that your hormones change. So your progesterone and your estrogen decline. And so then, because you don't need them anymore, you're not having periods, you don't need them anymore. But we don't realize the other effects that can have on the body, and the other issues that can be occurring in our body at that time. So there's other hormones that can be disrupted. So for instance, cortisol levels. So cortisol is the stress hormone. Many women in their 40s and 50s have a lot of responsibilities these days, and they're running around, tearing their hair out, trying to keep on top of their life, mostly suffering to some degree or another. I don't know many women who don't have a to-do list that stretches from here to next year, and 5 things go on the top and maybe 1 thing comes off the bottom, and that all causes a stress. Stress is a natural response and it's quite normal, but the levels that we are dealing with these days are not necessarily normal, and we have not evolved to catch up yet with that, and nor should we actually, because it's the levels of stress that we are dealing with that are quite ridiculous. And so that the cortisol that is produced from all that stress has a multitude of effects on the body, and it messes up other hormones as well. Now, one of the effects that cortisol leads to is that it increases our body's need for magnesium. It's more complicated than that, but to keep things simple, it means that we need more magnesium. So very simply, what I found for so many of my clients is that simply by starting to take a magnesium supplement, a good quality whole food magnesium supplement in a capsule, not in a pill, then you can start sleeping again. And once you can start sleeping again, then life becomes so much easier to deal with, and then we can start dealing with the other things. So
is that tip number 1?
Yeah, well, no, it's not actually, but that's one of my that's a bonus one. No, it is, and tip number 1 is to be proactive rather than passive, and to actually take some action. And so some action, go and get that, find a good quality magnesium supplement, the right one for you, and take the right dosage for yourself, and then you'll start to sleep, and then other things will start to fall into place again.
People try to take action in that they will mention maybe some symptoms to their doctor or their gynecologist.
Uh-huh.
But I think what a lot of people don't realize, and certainly since I've been involved as a specialist in this field, and doctors will even admit, in fact, I saw on a big site recently, today, in fact, an OBGYN saying she didn't have a clue that she didn't have a clue. People think that their doctors and their OBGYNs are trained in menopause and hormone balancing, and they're not. And so their first, and this was certainly my case, I confided in my GP, and my GP was just not qualified to help me. Do you find
exactly.
that case? And it leaves them, well, where do I go? And they have doctors saying to them, well, it's normal, suck it up, you know?
Exactly. And that is so wrong. It is not normal. The symptoms that we experience these days are common. They are not normal. Menopause is exactly, it's meant to be exactly what we thought. One day your period's finished, and that's that. And you become, as they used to be referred to as, like a wise old crone. That's what it's meant to be. We are not supposed to get these symptoms. These symptoms are a result of modern lifestyle and the daily habits that we all do, because that's what modern life is about. But it's actually, once you know what to do, the steps to take can be quite simple. But you're absolutely right. If you go to your doctor, which why wouldn't you go? You know, that's the kind of obvious choice. When you feel these changes coming on, you're going to go to your doctor. And generally speaking, because exactly as you say, they are not trained in menopause. They're actually not very well trained in hormones at all, because it's not, especially a GP, they're a jack of all trades. So that then don't specialize in any area like that, unless they've gone on and done extra training, because they've got a particular interest in that area. And that's quite rare. So when you go to your doctor, if you've got anxiety and such like, they quite often will offer you an antidepressant, but you're not depressed in that way. It's something else causing the anxiety. It's the perimenopause and the hormonal changes causing it. So that's a whole different ball game to being depressed, as it were. Also, if you're experiencing trouble, then the other thing that they might offer you is hormone replacement therapy. And again, menopause isn't called, it's natural for our hormones to reduce. It's very natural. As I said, it's all the other factors that are around that are causing the issue. And that's my tip number 2 then, is to try to resolve things naturally. I recommend that people make a few natural changes before they go down the medication route, because menopause isn't caused by a lack of medication. That's not necessarily the answer to it. So we can make simple lifestyle changes that do not have to, we can barely even notice them, and they can make a world of difference. Because that's another myth, that people think if they go on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, then everything will magically be better. And that is not necessarily the case. It doesn't work at all for some women. And it can actually make things worse for some women, because it's not the lack of the progesterone and the estrogen that's causing the problem. It can be an imbalance between them, and taking the HRT doesn't necessarily balance them out. So hence why I'm a natural menopause coach, in that I help people deal with it naturally, implement some changes to their food, to their lifestyle, to their mindset and their emotions, and to actually help them deal with the changes that are happening in their body, so that they don't need the medication, because it is not the magic medication necessarily. It does work for some women, but I consider it to be a last option, a last choice.
I think, as you said, that there's this confusion that it's just about the sex hormones, that's just about the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And that's why there's this feeling, whether you're for it or against it, that just throwing hormone replacement therapy at the problem will make it go away. But would you agree that it's this complicated dance, right? With the thyroid and with the adrenals, it's way more complex, you know, then, and which is why you need to be, look at yourself and your issues and be treated as a whole person, right? Which brings in the kind of natural approach that you advocate. So what are some of the simple tips and habit changes that you were referring to earlier?
Well, that kind of nicely leads me into tip number 3. And tip number 3 is to love your liver, love your gut, and love your adrenals, because they're the ones that much of the issues that we suffer are caused by poor liver health, you know, an overloaded, overstressed liver that just simply cannot cope with everything that we're putting into the body.
Like what?
So that can be foods. It can be eating too many processed foods. It can be, even if we're eating whole foods, it can be if we haven't washed them, for example. It's the pesticides and all the additives that are in the processed food and all the sugars. And it's just too much for our body to cope with. And then, so you've got the food giving us, adding toxins into the body. We have toxins in the air. You know, there's pollution out there. So I remember when I was staying in Toronto, our hotel was right by the airport, the train station, the boats, and the cars. And I can remember we were up on a high floor and with this beautiful view. And I opened the window the first day and I was just assaulted by, I was like, oh, that's not what I was expecting, because I had a view of the lake. And it was not what I expected. But so all of that is all around all of us.
Yeah.
And then you've got toxins in our makeup, our beauty products, our body products, what we've, you know, the furniture. There's so many things that we need to think of, but that can sound quite overwhelming to get rid of all those, but it really is actually quite simple. And you just start with the easy wins, you know, the low-hanging fruit. We start with the things like we can get non-toxic makeup, we can use organic food, we can wash our food before we, you know, there's just a few simple changes that we can make.
I'm very proud of my change the past couple of months. I have stopped using dryer sheets and have started using these woolen balls.
Excellent, yeah.
Because our clothes are on us all the time, right? You've got the fumes from those dryer sheets, and that fragrance is amazing, but it's like, well, what actually is that fragrance?
Absolutely.
Right?
And you know, they'll disrupt your hormones. It's easily proven. Now, there are ways you can use. Another thing that I do, so one of the tools that I use, obviously I use changing people's nutrition as a tool, so changing what they eat, adding in supplements, etc., to help. But also, what I realized after working with clients for a few years was that we live in a world of instant gratification. We want something quick. We want something to make us feel better quickly. And making changes to our food for some people can be a little bit more difficult and take a bit longer. So quick fixes are add in a magnesium supplement. But also, so many of our problems are emotionally based, and we hold on to emotions from the past, much like me finishing conversations from 25 years ago where I'd felt wronged. It's quite ridiculous, but somewhere that was still in me. And, you know, we're all holding on to hurts and grief and things like that. So I realized in my quest, I'm always looking for more things, more ways I can help women. And in aromatherapy was a way that I can use that. So I then qualified as an emotional aromatherapy advisor. So now I can use help women, and then you can get really, really quick wins and quick changes for women that they, you know, who would think that just by rubbing on an oil and inhaling that you can create change in your body? But you can. It's really, and that's so simple for women. And it's delicious, and it gives you fragrance that's really, really nice. So like when the dryer balls, you can add in, oils to it as well. I feel like I've gone off track there, Tracy. Where did so
no I think that's amazing.
There's ways that we can improve.
Yeah.
So there's different tools. So we can use food, toxins actually, sorry, going back to there, we were talking toxins. So there's lots of toxins in our environment that affect our hormones and change our hormones and cause us issues that then lead to these symptoms. The food that we eat, our relationships, the level of stress that we're dealing with and how we manage that. Simple, and a really simple way for helping that is 2 minutes of deep breathing, just 2 minutes. Every woman deserves 2 minutes to herself to do some deep breathing, to feel better, especially if you feel the anxiety starting to come on, or that feeling where, as I'm sure most women have experienced, where that overwhelm just starts to, you know, move in, and you just don't quite know what thing you're supposed to do next because there's so many that you need to do. Go, you know, even if you're working in an office, then just go to the ladies' room, sit on the, you know, just sit or stand or however's comfortable and do 2 minutes of deep breathing. If you wear a Fitbit, it's even got that on there and it will literally help you to do it. But it's as simple as taking a few deep breaths, and just will help to reset the system and help us feel, you know, that we're under control again, that we have control back. So I've gone off track again. So where did we get to? What do we need? So it's toxin, moving. We need to be doing some movement. We don't need to be going crazy. We don't need to be training for marathons. In fact, that can be very detrimental because it increases the cortisol levels and disrupts the hormones more. So actually, just going for a nice walk, just going for a walk is absolutely perfect. You can do more if you're used to doing more, but if you're not used to doing any exercise, then just going for a walk, just 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And if you can go out in nature, even better, because that will improve the experience for you on a holistic point of view. So we had nutrition, toxins, movement, daily habits and lifestyle, and mindset and emotions. All of those create, like you said, that kind of like, we need those to be all in balance or more balanced than they often are. And that will help us to feel better again.
And how do you start kind of helping or encouraging people to make these changes? Because when you're so kind of like deep in the mire of these peri or menopause symptoms, just even trying to change the smallest thing can be really tough.
It can tip you over the edge, can't it, into overwhelm? Yeah, and I think from my point of view, what I try to do is it's a very individual experience, and I'll talk to someone and I have a kind of a sheet that we go through and find and I'll offer people some suggestions for changes that they could make, and find the one that appeals to them the most, the one that they feel that they could follow through with. But going back again, because I never stop talking about magnesium, buying a good quality whole food, the right type of magnesium and the right dose for you, to take that supplement can be life-changing for some women.
Yeah.
Because then it can calm the anxiety, it can help them sleep, if that's two issues that they are having, just having some sleep and not feeling anxious all the time can make a world of difference. And then they can feel calm enough to then start making some of the other changes.
Right.
And when it comes to nutrition, whilst, as I said earlier, sugar is not good for us, some of us rely on it, you know, and taking that crutch away from women can cause more problems than, because it just makes them feel worse. Exactly. You know, there's so many.
Refreshing hearing you say that, right? It's like, don't take away my chocolate.
Exactly. We've all been there. I'm not perfect by any way, shape or form. And back in the day, years ago, if you went shopping, you went grocery shopping, and you put everything away, and you'll be sitting on the sofa that evening, and you can hear, oh, Vikki, you're like, who is it? Who is it? It's the chocolate calling, come and eat me. And so you go and you eat it, don't you? Because it's tasty. But do you know what? Chocolate contains magnesium.
Wow.
And your body is saying, apart from the fact that the chocolate contains sugar as well, which gives you that extra lift, but it's got the magnesium. The trouble is, it's not an excuse to go and eat chocolate in that respect. The trouble is that the sugar actually depletes the magnesium more. So it's kind of a vicious circle, but our body kind of knows, and it gives us comfort. And if we've had a stressful day where the children have been doing this and your boss has done that and the traffic on your commute was horrendous, and you get home and you forgot to take the dinner out of the freezer and now there's nothing to eat, or, you know, all of those lovely things that we go through every single day, having a glass of wine or the chocolate, we deserve it. And that's how we tell ourselves, isn't it? But it's actually, we don't realize that we're not, it feels good, but it's not actually helping. So what I do is, rather than taking things away, I start by adding things in. So that's like, let's try and have an extra portion of green vegetables with our dinner. Simple things like that can then affect some change. And then once your body starts to feel more nourished and has more of the nutrients that it needs, it won't be so demanding. It will be calmer and it will be kinder to you, because it will, you know, lots of women get cravings and then they'll eat, but they're hungry. So they'll eat, but they're still hungry. So they'll eat. And it's because they're not eating the foods that their body needs, and they're not getting the nutrients that their body needs. Once you satisfy that need, then the body's like, yeah, that's fine. No, I'm fine now. You don't need to eat anything more. But that can still be, there can still be the mindset that, well, I need to because I'm used to, you know, 3 meals a day. We have to eat 3 meals a day. Who decided that we have to eat 3 meals a day? Did cavemen get up and say, come on, love, we need breakfast, get out there, get it sorted? You know, you think about it. It's not, or could it have been marketing people or advertising people, or, you know, people with a different criteria that have decided that we should eat 3 meals a day and that they have to be at these times. So it's about finding what works for the individual rather than what we're told we should be doing. And that kind of actually, that the other thing about that is the food pyramid that we're told about how we should eat. Well, maybe when you're younger, that can be an okay way to eat. But once you start getting to perimenopause and menopause, that food pyramid is not going to be your friend. You need to change things.
Like what, for example?
So, for example, you don't need as many carbohydrates. The food pyramid on the bottom, it's like all the carbohydrates and that, isn't it? So your bread and your pasta and your rice and things like that. As women, when we get to our 40s and our 50s, we do not need that level of carbohydrates. We do need the fruit and vegetables. We need to be increasing that side of it, but decreasing the bread and the pasta and the rice, etc., because that is not going to be helpful to us, particularly if we're trying to balance our hormones and lose weight, because that weight gain is just a symptom of imbalanced hormones. It can obviously be eating the wrong foods, but it's those foods are contributing to the fact that our hormones are becoming unbalanced because we're eating too many of the wrong foods. So just simple changes like that.
Probably a vicious cycle, right? You're getting those cravings for those foods because you have certain micronutrient imbalances. I want to just go back to the chocolate.
Everyone does.
So are you saying hypothetically that if you balance your magnesium levels by taking good, and you also want the right dosage, because it can cause some stomach disturbances, right? So are you saying that if you level out those magnesium levels, you may have less craving for chocolate?
For sure, definitely. most definitely. And
Yeah.
you know, I speak from personal experience, and I've worked with hundreds of women now who have been chocolate freaks, who suddenly realize after a week or two or more that they haven't had any chocolate, because it's the magnesium. Is your body is wanting it wants the hit of the sugar, but it also needs the magnesium as well. And once you get that magnesium sorted in your body,
right,
one of the positive side effects of balancing your magnesium levels is that you won't crave the chocolate like you did previously.
And if you do like a little bit of chocolate as a way, as like your as a cue to kind of wind down in the evening or whatever, what kind of chocolate do you recommend? Are you saying go for a good quality chocolate? Like if you're going to have chocolate, have a good chocolate, but just have one square of a good chocolate,
and just
as opposed to
savor it,
down a Cadbury's bar, right?
Yeah. So like as dark as you can take. And personally speaking, I would rather go without chocolate, because I actually don't really like the dark chocolate. For me, I needed the milk chocolate. So I'm not fussed about chocolate anymore. So I'll just leave it. But yes, if you are, you know, or you, like you say, it's part of your wind down routine. Well, one, we could actually look at changing the wind down routine.
Yeah.
But two, if the easy way to start is go with a nice, you know, what is it, like 80% cocoa, is that what they, and the dark chocolates.
Yes.
Maybe a flavored one. I mean, my husband likes chocolates like that, so that's great for me, because I only buy chocolate like that, which I'm not really keen on. So he eats it, because you know, men,
so
they
if
don't
you're
have
craving the milk chocolate, does that
Yes.
mean you're actually just wanting the sugar hit?
Yes.
So
That's more an emotional.
Your blood sugar. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, we think, you know, it's got the sugar in it, so we want that hit, and we think that that's going to give us energy and make us feel better, and it will temporarily. But what we want to try and do is balance the blood sugar level. And what happens when we're having things like the chocolate, it pushes the blood sugar levels up really, really high, and then we crash down off the other side again. And that's why when we get the cravings, women are you know, they'll eat something, and then 10 minutes later, and you know, like when you eat Chinese, you're always starving again half an hour later, and it's because it's all the sugar in that. And so you're on this constant zigzag, whereas what you want to try and do is balance that out, because if you can balance your blood sugar level, it will help balance the hormones, it will help balance your moods, and it will leave you, and it will balance the anxiety as well. It will counteract that. So it's really good to have balanced blood sugar levels.
And is having that glass of wine at night, that little piece of chocolate to reward yourself after a hard day, is that going to possibly mess with your sleep, and how?
Well, it could do, couldn't it? It really could. And the other thing that it does, very sadly, and I speak as a wine lover who likes to indulge in the odd glass of a weekend. But the trouble is that alcohol will affect our estrogen levels.
Oh, in what way? How does that work?
It will cause them to raise, and then, so what I didn't talk about earlier when we talked about going into perimenopause, the reason that so we've got estrogen and progesterone. During our reproductive years, they kind of troll along and they're quite happy like this. But as we go into perimenopause, what happens is the progesterone levels will start to drop, and an estrogen will drop too, but they do not drop in the same way. So your progesterone levels can drop 75%, but your estrogen levels might only drop 35%. So you've now got this much wider gap, and your estrogen, well, the hormone levels they don't stay as stable. They kind of bounce around.
Right.
And so that will then lead to different symptoms at different times of the month, you know, depending on when you're on your cycle. So the trouble with so many women can, even post menopause, can become estrogen, have too much estrogen in their body.
Which is throwing estrogen HRT is at the issue is not necessarily the answer, because everybody thinks that they actually low in estrogen, but you're saying that they actually estrogen dominant relative to the amount of progesterone.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the reasons, so we can add, women have been taking a birth control pill. So that will disrupt, sorry, excuse me, I'm just tickled. I don't want to cough at you. So the birth control can have an effect on that. Alcohol can have an effect by raising the estrogen levels. Toxins can have an effect. Being overweight can have an effect, because that will all create, we have different types of estrogen, but it's as a whole, adding all of those estrogens together, we can have too much. And exactly as you say, many women, even post menopause, can be estrogen dominant. And so exactly as you said, that's having too much estrogen in relation to the amount of progesterone in their body. Because another thing that many, another myth, as it were, about menopause is that once you are post-menopause, you don't have any progesterone or estrogen in your body. That's not true. It's not true. Your ovaries no longer produce them. But think about it. Men have the same 3 hormones as women: the progesterone, the estrogen, and the testosterone. They just have them in entirely different levels to women. And they don't have ovaries. So somewhere else is producing them. So that goes back to what I was saying about love your liver, love your gut, love your adrenals, because the adrenals produce those hormones in men and in women. So when we are post-menopause, we no longer produce them from the ovaries, but we are still producing them from the adrenals. And we can be then producing them as well from belly fat that can create estrogen. The alcohol can have an effect, and the toxins, etc., can also have an effect. So going back to what you were saying about a glass of wine and the chocolate perhaps disrupting our sleep, yes, potentially it could. It depends how long of a gap you lead it. More importantly, it depends what else you've eaten and done during the day. So for instance, if you've eaten whole foods of the right type that benefits a woman once she's reached around 40 plus, and you're hydrated, you've exercised, or you've moved, and you've had a good night's sleep the night before, having a piece of chocolate and a glass of wine won't necessarily be too detrimental to you. However, if you've eaten a more kind of traditional diet, you've been completely stressed, you're not taking any supplements, you're overwhelmed with everything, and you didn't sleep the night before, and you're dehydrated, and you've not moved, then it's going to have more of an effect. Right. So, because I am a woman who does like a glass of wine sometimes, and occasionally chocolate or something like that, I've learned through trial and error on myself that so long, and on many clients who've also benefited from this knowledge, if you can get the wheel, all of the things, if you start looking at all of the different things, then you can still enjoy a glass of wine. Right. You may need to lose it for a little while, or you may need to reduce it, but you can, people think, oh, she's talking about changing my diet, it's going to be awful, I'm going to have to eat all these horrible foods that I don't like, and everything that I've ever liked eating and drinking in the past, I'm not going to be ever allowed any of that again. But that simply is not the case. It doesn't have to be like that at all. And because I am a woman who enjoys the occasional glass of wine, I have done all the work for you, ladies. I have experimented on myself to see what works. And as I say, then other clients have benefited from that too. So you can, so long as we go round the circle and we start changing things, then life isn't over. We can have a glass of wine. We might be able to have some chocolate. We can drink coffee, but not loads of it.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I always say to women is, if you're going to have something like that. If you're going to enjoy a treat, as we might still term it, make sure it's really good so you can savor it. So, you know, coffee, I have one coffee a day, and I've very recently discovered our local coffee shop, you know, because with all the changes that are going on, businesses are adapting, and my local coffee shop have started selling the coffee that they make their coffees with, which is delicious. And it's I don't know how, what do they do to coffee? Roasted. It's roasted locally, and I buy it from them. So I have 1 cup of coffee a day, and it's so and I have it with almond milk. They do this barista style almond milk, so it's like a proper coffee, and it's delicious, and it's tiny, and I savor every mouthful of it, and then I'm done. And I have it before noon so that it's not going to disrupt my day or my sleep in any way. And the same with wine. If you're going to indulge, then make it worthwhile, and make it just that it's very enjoyable, and then you feel satisfied. But going back, if you are nourished, and I don't just mean with food, then the cravings and the desperation will not be there, and then the enjoyment can come back.
Absolutely. I love that message. Really, really love it. Thank you, Vikki. Tell us, how can people get hold of you? Where can they find you?
Well, I have a website, but I've had problems with it this week, and it's not, you can't access it at the minute. I have to resolve that. But I did actually do a little free gift for all your lovely ladies. I thought they might, because I've been talking so much about food, and because I like, as a nutritional therapist who loves food, I wanted to show them that you can enjoy good food that tastes lovely and is good for you. Now I'm hoping, so I'm going to put this in the chat for you, Tracy, on here on, and so that, because you can't access my website, ordinarily my website is www.menopausesupportgroup.com. Hopefully soon it will be back up and running, but meantime, if you would like a free recipe book, basically there's 15 recipes in there full of delicious foods that I, you know, recipes that I've created that are all good for women during menopause.
Oh, thank you. That is amazing.
Which is what we need. But equally, you can find me on Facebook, either under Vikki Ede or at Menopause Support Group. I've got a page and a group, but everything, if you apply for the recipe book, then it will send you an email, and that will have all my contact details on it as well.
Oh,
so
and
that
do
will make
you
life
group
easier.
Coaching or one-on-one coaching or
Yes,
and you work with people all around the world?
I do. I've got a Facebook group with quite a few ladies in it, and they are literally from all around the world. And I do a lot of group coaching, and I do one-on-one as well. And you know, although I'm a nutritional therapist, I'm a personal trainer, so I can do it from the exercise side. I'm emotional aromatherapy, so I can use the oils. So I've got lots of different tools. We need lots of tools in our toolbox to actually help us and because I like to personalize everything for everybody, because we are all completely different. All our life experiences are different, and as I said earlier, I like to help people find the easiest route for them, because we're already overwhelmed. You don't need a massive program from me saying, right, your life's going to change from today, because that's not how it works. It's setting yourself up. I would be setting you up for not being successful. And I want people to be successful. I want other women to go from where I was 7 years ago, feeling like I was literally Googling dementia. I thought I was crazy. And to feeling great again, because we all deserve to feel great. We live longer, and we want to live and enjoy it, not be feeling so terrible, not experiencing hot flushes all the way through till we're 60, 70 and beyond. That is not how it should be. We should all be living life and enjoying ourselves and having fun and being able to go and do things and not creaking around with our sore joints. And we don't need any of that. We need people like ourselves, you know, that we can benefit from with the movement, all of the different ways that we can help each other, and to help ourselves to feel better and enjoy life again.
Absolutely. Love it. I absolutely love your message. I really do.
Oh, and one final bonus tip, ladies,
Mhm.
be kind to yourself.
Yes.
We put so much pressure on ourselves.
Yeah.
Just be kind and give yourself a break. Your body is going through huge changes.
Yeah.
Be kind.
I love that. So, so true. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming to chat with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome, awesome information. It's been great. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again sometime.
I would love to. I would love to. And
Lovely.
if anyone's got any questions, then just let me know.
Yes, please. And if people have questions, can they pop them in the chat and tag you? Will you be able to pop in and
Yes.
maybe answer some
Yes.
questions for people who watch
Sure.
on the replay?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you. And you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.